My boss Roger had a line for everything, and the line was, "It's just a joke." So I ruined him at his 10th anniversary party. He had been at the company almost 10 years when I started, and he acted like that made him untouchable. From my first week, the comments started. He told me what he thought of how I looked in certain clothes. He made remarks about my body in front of other people and looked around the room to make sure everyone laughed. When I did not laugh, he told me to lighten up, that I should be flattered a man like him noticed me, that I clearly could not take a joke. That was always the ending. It's just a joke. Learn to take a joke. The thing about Roger was that he truly believed every woman in the building was there to be charmed by him. He assumed the young women who came in for interviews were there to flirt. He assumed the new hires were impressed by him. When a female delivery driver dropped off lunch one day, he made a comment that made her leave without a word, and he turned to the room and said she was too uptight for her own good. He never once thought the problem might be him, because in his mind he was the most important person in any room he walked into. I went to HR after a particularly bad week, and HR was a single tired woman named Jimena, who had known Roger for years. She told me gently that Roger was old school, and I should try not to take things personally. She did not write anything down while I was talking. She did not ask for any of the dates I had brought with me on a piece of paper folded in my pocket. She nodded a lot, and she said the word unfortunately 3 different times, and she walked me back to my desk afterward like she was escorting me out of a building I no longer worked in. Nothing happened. Roger found out I had complained, and instead of stopping, he got worse, because now he knew nothing would touch him. He bragged to the other managers that HR was his friend, and no one could do anything about how he ran his floor. He said it loud enough for me to hear. Then he winked at me, because to him my complaint was just one more thing to joke about. He started making his comments louder and prouder. He told me one morning, in front of 2 interns, exactly what he thought my real role at the company should be, and when one intern looked sick, Roger told her she would understand workplace humor when she grew up. That was the morning I stopped waiting for someone else to fix it and started paying attention instead. I started a folder on my phone that night. I called it nothing in particular, just a date, so that if anyone ever glanced at my screen, they would not see anything worth reading. Inside the folder, I kept everything. Every comment Roger made in the team chat that the partners somehow never saw. Every joke he posted on the company-wide board about a female applicant or a new receptionist or the assistant from the firm next door. Every date, every witness, every name of every person who had been in the room when he said what he said. When my coworker Lacey forwarded me one of his more memorable group emails with a single line of her own that said, "I cannot believe this is allowed," I screenshotted her line too, because someday it was going to matter that another woman in the building had also been done with him long before anyone outside the building knew his name. I did not tell anyone what I was doing. I did not have a plan yet. I just had the file, and the file kept growing, because Roger never slowed down. Roger could not slow down, because slowing down would have meant admitting he had ever been moving in a wrong direction, and Roger did not believe in wrong directions. He believed in audiences, and the audience had always laughed. Here is what I knew that Roger never bothered to learn. Our entire company ran on one client, a firm that gave us almost half of everything we earned. Roger had never met the person who ran that client, because he thought account details were beneath him and left the relationship to the rest of us. The person who ran that client was a woman named Adrienne, sharp, serious, and not someone who found Roger's kind of humor charming. For 2 years I had been the one managing that account. I had her direct line. I knew what she sounded like on a call. I knew what she looked like in the small photo at the bottom of her email signature. Roger had no idea any of this existed, because Roger never read past the subject line on anything that did not have his name on it. I also knew something the planning committee had been keeping quiet. For Roger's 10th anniversary, the company was throwing a big party, and as a surprise, the partners had invited Adrienne herself to come and say a few words about the partnership, because her firm was that important to us. They told her she was the guest of honor. They told Roger nothing, because they wanted his face when she walked in. Roger had been CC'd on 3 separate emails that mentioned a special guest for the night. He had read none of them. He had no idea what she looked like, and I knew, the way you know the sun will rise, that Roger could not be in a room with a woman he did not recognize and keep his mouth shut. So I did one small thing. When the committee asked who should greet the special guest and walk her over before the speeches, I offered to handle it. The committee was relieved. The committee was always relieved when someone volunteered for the boring parts. Then, on the night of the party, I made sure I was very busy somewhere else when Adrienne actually arrived. I told the woman at the front desk I would meet our guest by the entrance at 7. At 6:55, I was on the other side of the building checking on a microphone that did not need to be checked, while Adrienne stood by the bar alone in a dark blazer, holding a glass of soda water, looking for the person who was supposed to find her. I never said a single word to Roger about who she was. I never warned him. I never gave him the cheat sheet that any reasonable employee would have given a boss walking into a room full of clients. I did not whisper a hint to him on the way in. I did not put a small note next to his place card that said, "Look out for the woman by the bar." I just let Roger be Roger at his own party, in front of 50 coworkers, with the most important client in the building standing right in front of him. It went exactly the way 10 years of his behavior promised it would. I watched it from across the room because I made sure I had a clear sight line. Roger spotted Adrienne by the bar, and his face did the thing it always did when he saw a well-dressed woman he could not place. The small head tilt, the smile that was not really a smile. He walked toward her with his glass already lifted like they were old friends meeting again. He decided, the way Roger always decided things, that she must be somebody's wife, or somebody's assistant, or somebody brought in for decoration. He leaned on the bar next to her and he made one of his jokes. The exact kind he had made to me 100 times. The kind about what a woman like her could do for a man like him. About how she had clearly come to the party looking for the right kind of company. About how he could show her a good time if she was interested. I could not hear every word from where I was standing, but I did not need to. I could see his mouth. I could see her face. She did not laugh. She did not smile. She did not even pretend the way most women pretend in those moments. She just looked at him the way you look at a stain on a tablecloth. She asked him calmly if he knew who she was. Roger laughed at the question. He told her, loud enough for the 2 coworkers nearest the bar to turn their heads, that it did not matter who she was, that she should relax and enjoy herself, that he had been at this company for 10 years, and he knew how to make a girl feel welcome. That was when Adrienne set her glass down on the bar. She did not raise her voice. She did not even stop looking at him. She introduced herself, slowly and clearly, by her full name and her title, and the name of her firm, the head of the client that paid for almost half of his paychecks, the guest of honor he had been told about in 3 emails he never read, the woman whose name was on every quarterly report he claimed to have reviewed, the woman whose firm had been in our pipeline before he was hired, whose photo had been on the wall of the main conference room for years, whose face he must have walked past 1,000 times, without ever once being curious enough to ask whose face it was. I watched the color drain out of Roger's face in real time. It did not happen fast. It was slow, the way water leaves a glass with a slow crack at the bottom. His mouth opened, his hand on the bar went still. He started to say something, then stopped, then started again, and what came out was a small, strangled version of his usual confidence. Something about how he had only been joking, how she should not take it the wrong way, how he had a great sense of humor and everyone knew that. The 2 co-workers near the bar were now openly watching. So was the bartender. So was a manager from the floor above who had been walking past with a plate of appetizers and stopped without meaning to. The entire little ring of people around the bar had gone quiet, and the quiet was spreading outward like a stain. Adrienne did not give him anything to hold on to. She did not yell at him. She did not lecture him. She just said, in a voice that was not loud but somehow filled the room, that she would be speaking with the partners in the morning about whether her firm wished to remain in business with people who spoke to women that way. Then she picked up her bag, set down her glass, and walked out of the party. She did not say goodbye to the partners. She did not give the speech she had been invited to give. She walked across the room in a straight line, past the cake on the table, past the framed photograph of Roger that someone had put on an easel near the door, and she was gone before anyone thought to follow her. Roger stood at the bar with his drink still in his hand. He turned slowly to look at the people who had watched it all happen. He tried his usual move, the one that had worked for 10 years. He smiled, big and wide, and he said, loud enough for the people closest to him, that it was just a joke, that she clearly could not take a joke, that nobody could take a joke anymore. Nobody laughed. The bartender looked at the floor. The manager with the plate of appetizers turned and walked the other way. The 2 co-workers nearest the bar looked at each other like they were checking to make sure they had both seen the same thing, and then they looked at Roger, and they did not look away. A woman from the floor below, someone I had only ever spoken to twice in the elevator, set her drink down on a nearby table and walked toward the door without finishing her conversation. The intern who had been in the room the morning Roger told me what my real role at the company should be was standing about 10 feet from the bar with her hand over her mouth. She caught my eye across the room and she nodded once. It was a small nod. It was the kind of nod you give someone when you have been waiting a long time for the world to do something you stopped believing the world was going to do. The mask did not come off all at once. It came off in pieces. First the smile, then the volume, then the certainty that had carried him through every room in this building for a decade. He looked around the bar area for someone, anyone, who would do the thing that had always been done for him. He looked for a laugh. He looked for a slap on the back. He looked for the soft, automatic agreement that it's just Roger and you know how he is, and he doesn't mean anything by it. Nobody was offering it. Not tonight. Not in front of the woman who paid half their salaries. Roger turned back to the bar and stared at his glass. The room around him did not go back to normal. The music kept playing, but the conversations had changed pitch. People were leaning in toward each other and whispering. People were looking at him and then looking away too quickly. The party had not ended, but it had stopped being his party. It had become the thing that happened to him at his own party. I watched him from across the room and I did not feel anything I expected to feel. Not victory, not triumph, just a clean, quiet sense that the room had finally rearranged itself around the truth, and the truth had a face, and the face belonged to Roger. By the next morning, Adrienne's firm had paused the contract. It was in writing. It was in an email her assistant sent to the partners at 7:46, which I know because I was already at my desk, and the partners' assistants were forwarding it to half the building by 8. The email did not say Roger's name. It did not have to. It said the firm was reconsidering its relationship with our company in light of behavior that did not reflect the values they expected from a partner. It said they would like the partners to call by noon. The partners had laughed off every complaint about Roger for 10 years. They had laughed off mine. They had laughed off the complaints of 2 women who had quit before me, who I only learned about later when I went looking for them. They had laughed off Jimena's careful professional notes about how Roger's behavior was creating a pattern. They had laughed all of it off because Roger was old school, and Roger was a friend, and Roger brought in business, and Roger was Roger. The phrase had always been a kind of magic, and the magic had always worked. The magic stopped working at 7:46 in the morning, when a single email made it very clear that Roger was about to cost them half their revenue. By 9, the partners had called Adrienne. By 10, they had called Roger into the conference room with the door shut. By 11, the building knew. Roger did not come back to his desk that day. He did not come back the next day either. The official line, when it came down through Jimena's careful HR email at the end of the week, was that Roger had decided to pursue other opportunities. The unofficial line, which was the only one anyone believed, was that Adrienne had made his removal a condition of her firm staying with us, and the partners had folded inside of 10 minutes because money has always been louder than loyalty in that building. I did not gloat. I did not need to. I went to my desk and did my job the way I had done my job every day for the 3 years I had worked there. The week after Roger left, 2 different women on different floors stopped me in the hallway and told me quietly that they were glad. One of them said it with her eyes on the floor. The other one said it and then walked away quickly, like she did not want to be seen having said it. A few of the men, the ones who had been Roger's lunch crowd, would not look at me anymore. I did not mind. I had not done what I did so they would like me. I had done it so they would stop being able to pretend. Lacey came by my desk on the second day with 2 cups of coffee and set one of them down in front of me without saying anything. She had been at the company longer than I had. She had her own folder, I learned later. Hers was older than mine. We did not talk about Roger that morning. We talked about a project that was due Friday. But she stayed at my desk for an extra minute after we were done, and before she walked away, she put her hand on the back of my chair and squeezed it once. The way you squeeze the shoulder of someone you have been worried about for a long time. That was all the conversation we needed. The intern who had been in the room the morning Roger told me what my real role at the company should be sent me an email at the end of that first week. It was 3 sentences. She said she had heard what happened at the party. She said she had been thinking about that morning every day since it happened, and she had not known what to do with it, but she did now. She said she she was sorry it had taken her this long to write it down. I wrote back and told her she did not owe me an apology. I told her she owed herself a better building than the one we had been working in, and that the building was going to start being better now, because the people who had made it bad were on their way out. A month later, Jimena from HR asked if she could buy me a coffee. We sat in the small cafe across the street from the office, and she stirred her drink for a long time before she said anything. She told me she had known Roger was a problem. She told me she had told the partners for years. She told me she had been overruled every single time, and that she had eventually started to believe the overrule was the answer, because what else was she supposed to do? I let her say it. I did not tell her she was forgiven. I did not tell her she was not. I just listened, because she needed to say it out loud to someone who already knew. When she was done, she said the partners were instituting a new reporting process, one that did not run through a single person who had personal relationships with the people being reported. She said it like she was reading from a memo, because she was. Adrian's firm had made that a condition too. Jimena looked across the table at me when she finished, and she said very quietly that she should have done more. I told her that the next woman who walked into her office was the answer to that sentence, not me. She nodded. She did not argue. She paid for the coffee. I want to say something honest about what happened at that party, because I think it matters. I did not trick Roger. I did not lure him. I did not set him up in any way that would not have worked on any other ordinary night. All I did was let Roger be Roger in a room where Roger was finally being watched by someone he could not bully and could not dismiss. The trap, if there was a trap, was a trap he had been building for himself for 10 years, one comment at a time, one wink at a time, one it's just a joke at a time. I just stopped covering the hole he had dug. I stopped warning the people around him. I stopped doing the small, quiet work that women had been doing for him his entire career, the work of making sure he never had to face the consequences of being exactly who he was, the work I had been doing for him, for free, for 3 years, the work he never noticed because the work was invisible by design. Roger had never once in his 10 years at that company been alone in a room with a woman who outranked him, who did not need him, who had no reason to laugh at his jokes. Adrian was the first. And the second he was alone in the room with her, the whole arrangement folded, because the arrangement had never been strong. The arrangement had only been everyone agreeing not to look. I stopped looking away first. The rest of the room caught up faster than anyone could have predicted, because most of the rest of the room had been waiting for someone to go first. There is one image from that night that I keep coming back to. After Adrian left, after Roger tried his last "it's just a joke" and got nothing back from the room, he sat down at one of the round tables that had been set up for dinner. The table was empty. The other guests had drifted to the other side of the room without anyone announcing they were moving. He sat there alone, in his blazer with the small 10 years pin on the lapel that someone in HR had ordered for him, and he stared at the centerpiece. The centerpiece was a small arrangement of white flowers and a number 10 cut out of gold cardstock. Roger looked at the number 10, and the number 10 looked back at him. He sat there for what must have been 20 minutes. Nobody joined him. Nobody asked him if he was okay. Nobody refilled his drink. The partners were on the other side of the room having a quiet, urgent conversation by the windows. The kind of conversation where one of them keeps glancing at the door Adrian had walked out of like he was hoping she might walk back through it. She was not coming back. They knew she was not coming back. They were already, even then, beginning the math that would end with Roger gone. He was the man of the hour in a room that had decided, all at once, that the hour was over. When I left the party that night, I walked past his table on my way to the coat check. He did not look up. I did not stop. I got my coat and I walked out into the parking lot, and I sat in my car for a long minute before I started the engine. The lot was almost empty. The string lights someone had hung in the trees by the entrance were still on, and through my windshield they looked smaller than they had looked when I walked in. I did not cry. I did not laugh. I just sat there with my hands on the wheel and listened to the engine settle. Then I drove home. I went to bed. I slept better than I had slept in 3 years. The next time I walked past the bar where Roger had said what he said to Adrian, the bar was empty, and somebody had taken down the framed photograph that used to sit on the easel by the door. Nobody had announced its removal. It was just gone. The wall where it used to lean had a faint rectangle of clean paint where the dust had not collected, and that rectangle was the only thing in the building that still admitted he had ever been there. I walked past the rectangle with my coffee. I did not stop. I went to my desk, opened my laptop, and got back to work.